So if we tab into edit mode and we press 2 to switch to edge, and we press Q, the first option you'll see in the hardops Q menu for edit mode is mark. And if we hover over it, we see that mark is a bit of a multi-tool that does a variety of functions. My favorite thing with mark is the ability to add a bevel. But the main thing that mark does is whenever you click it with left mouse click, it will mark and unmark an edge. And if you're ever curious as to what settings it's using for marking, look no further than the control tilde. Similar to sharpen, mark is the counterpart of S sharpen, but for edit mode. And this will allow you to specify what you're actually manually marking whenever you go in and you click mark. So in the event that you sharpen something and things just go awry and it's not the exact marking result that you want, you could always just go in edit mode, unmark it, and then do with it what you will. The next aspect of mark that I want to talk about is the bevel aspect. So if we hover over it and look at the tooltip, we see that control clicking it will actually bevel it and add a vertex group. So let's do that. We control click mark and we see that there's now a bevel happening. And this is still in edit mode, and we can press 1 and set our profile. And we do a variety of things with our bevel similar to what we could do before. We can press 1 to make it inverse, turn it into a half pipe. We can make it a super ellipse like normal, and then we could just click and apply that. And then even in object mode, we can just hit it with an S sharpen to get it shaded. But because this is a non-destructive bevel happening, it did shade this edge by accident, resulted in some very harsh shading. So we can just unmark that, and now things are back correct. So in a way, mark is just there for you. In fact, we'll use bevel again by selecting these two edges. I selected one edge and then shift click the other edge, and we can control click mark in order to add a bevel to a new edge. And then in object mode, if we want to add a bevel on top of this, we could just simply just control click bevel in order to add a bevel on top of all three of these. So if we look at our modifier stack, we have 3 different bevels happening, 2 of them utilizing vertex groups, 1 of them utilizing the angle of the mesh itself. So back in edit mode, the next thing I want to talk about is its ability to utilize the multi-tool. With this shape, it's actually too simple for us to use, but if we were to have a cube, right, and we subdivided it into something like this, and we needed to quickly select something, the idea behind this is that you can just shift click mark and jump into a select tool, or you can just quickly select something while holding shift, control scroll to grow your selection, and just jump around. So sometimes selecting on laptop can be a little difficult, and I was wondering about where to put the select option where it could be most accessible, and it turned out that having it as part of mark was just a good idea. So the next thing from there is Alt for adjusting the bevel weight. So we discussed bevel previously, where if you are working in a weighted workflow, bevel will automatically be added with weight, but it's not completely necessary. Sometimes you could just add a bevel and just press L and just change the limit method to weight. And I said sometimes, but it's actually all the time. And so now we're limiting our limit method by the weight. And this means that if we sharpen it, we're actually marking the edges that are 30 degrees with basically sharp markings, and now it's updated the bevel. And so B weight comes in handy because if you're in this particular type of workflow, you can come in here, alt click mark, and basically lower the bevel influence that's happening in a particular area. So right here, it's not actually the most optimal scenario, but let's take this shape and actually subdivide it, and we'll subdivide it maybe one more time via Shift R. We'll select this vert and we'll jump ahead and actually use circle. However, loop tools isn't enabled, so let's actually go under our preferences and enable loop tools. Loop tools is a classic and it's definitely recommended, and we'll save our preferences. And from here, we're just going to add a circle, and we're going to sharpen that. And we see that this circle at this particular bevel amount isn't going to work out. So let's grow that, which let's actually use the tools for that. You know, I'm still getting acquainted with things, so we can shift click mark and then control scroll to grow our selection, spacebar to apply, shift H to show everything but that, and we'll just select one edge and then alt click mark. And at this point, we can actually just press A to select all weights, where we can just actually bring this into something more reasonable like 0.2. And so now we actually have this area that's being beveled at 0.2, while the rest of this is being handled at a weight of 0.1. And this is just the surface of basically what you can get out of utilizing mark at its best. The last one I want to talk about is Control plus Shift, which is how you add weld. This one was shuffled around recently, but I don't believe people were actually utilizing it at its max previously. So to go over that one, let's actually create a shape, and we'll just, bevel this face as I often do for tool tests. We'll step our cursor here, and we'll Shift A, add a cylinder, and I'm going to rotate, add the cylinder, and then from here we'll press Control Alt Spacebar to add a union boolean to this. And we know it's a union because there's no mesh on the inside and it's connected. But the best part of doing these things in edit mode is it does select a boundary, which I've always loved. So let's say we want to actually clean this geometry up, just this area utilizing weld. Well, by going in here and basically Control Shift clicking mark, we can go under weld, and by scrolling the wheel, we're actually helping these connections get made. So we can't see it so good in edit mode, but if we tab into object mode, we can actually see what's going on here. In fact, we'll press Alt V, look at the wireframe, and we can toggle weld off and on just to see exactly how far we're moving things. I mean, do we want to move things so far that this gets corrected here? We could drag this and find out, and we find that that's kind of a great push. However, it's important to be able to set up vertex groups with weld in edit mode in order to get kind of a controlled weld happening, because it can be the difference between getting a nice surface going and having something that's a bit of a shading disaster. But something like that can come in very handy for just bullying a curvature into another curvature area, and then just using weld to just kind of mitigate it in the meantime until you go in and give it a finer fix. So tabbing back in, that covers basically all of mark in edit mode. So hopefully it's given some insight as to how you can utilize it to firstly mark and unmark edges, but also control clicking it to just add a bevel, which is one of my favorite ways to use mark. It just seemed like it was a no-brainer to be able to control click mark and be able to bevel a selection. In fact, we'll select this edge, jump to this edge, and by control clicking mark, we can actually bevel this area just the amount we want. We can grab this side and control click and lower this amount just so slightly, so we have a bigger bevel on this side than this side. And the best part is, since these are vertex bevels, they don't get affected by things like sorting. So if we go in here and we do a difference, we see that the bevel didn't actually get moved position, which would actually be disastrous for this V group data. So we do take those sort of things in mind as well when it comes to sorting, and you can still select this, control click bevel to put a bevel on top of it. We're looking at a bit of an auto smooth disaster, so I'll just press 1 for that. And now we're looking a little better, but we want to alt click sharpen to also fix our weighted normal. And we might also want to even roll our bevel back just to get our shading just right in here. But now we're dealing with multiple levels of vertex group bevels in addition to object mode bevels, while also dealing with shading in object mode. And this is still something I would consider a basic concept. Hopefully this entices users to spend a little time with mark, getting acquainted with it, because it is intended to be the ultimate edit tool for multi-use operation.